Happy Friday afternoon, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Coming up next, the Another View Roundtable has a packed agenda. Today's topics: another HBCU shuts its doors after 125 years of educating African American students. Are HBCUs becoming irrelevant? Separation among Republican leaders and the man chosen to be the Republican candidate for lieutenant governor. Why the distance? And this Sunday is Father's Day. Is the Black community fatherless? Roger, Will, and Bill are here to square off on these and other issues when the Another View Roundtable gets started right after this news from NPR.
Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. So glad that you are joining us today for the Roundtable, which is always a very popular segment on this show. Before we get started, though, just a quick program note. If you are history buff, you may be very interested in a program that's coming on our WHRO World channel, and it is called the North Pole Promise. And it is about actor, narrator James Earl Jones and Dr. S. Allen Counter talk about honoring the centennial of the North Pole explorers and the Inuit descendants with a capsule aboard the USS Annapolis. And so the documentary airs this coming Sunday at 2:30 p.m. on WHRO World. It's also on Monday at 10:30 p.m. and Tuesday at 4:30 a.m. So you could set your DVR for that show if you don't get a chance to see it. It's called the North Pole Promise. So we hope that you will tune in. So it's the second Friday of the month, and our favorite pundits are here to talk about issues from an African American perspective. Please welcome Roger Chesley. He is columnist for the Virginian-Pilot, and you can read his columns every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Hey, Roger.
Barbara, how are you today?
It seems like it's been a long time since I've seen you. It's good to see you.
Oh, the absence makes the heart grow fonder, Barbara.
Joining us by phone currently is community activist and passionate defender of his perspective, Bill Thomas. Hey, Bill.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Hampton Roads.
Bill,
you guys are going to have to do something about this traffic. It is unreasonable. It is insanity out here.
So you are trying to work your way here to the studio, right?
Oh,
are you close?
Oh, yeah, I'm close. I'm almost dying of carbon monoxide poisoning being stuck in that tunnel. I'm still alive and well and still. So welcome, everybody.
Well,
nice being here.
We are really glad that you're still alive, and we're so happy to have you here with us on the show today. And our author, journalist, and talk show host, Will LaVeist. Hi, Will. How are you?
Oh, it was a pleasure to be here.
Good. And we know that you had some surgery recently. You feeling okay?
Yeah, I'm doing
okay.
I'm hobbling along.
Great.
Got the assistance of my wife today, so I'm appreciative.
Fantastic. And our fourth panelist, NSU professor, political science professor Carol Pretlow, could not be with us today. She is spending the summer at UVA and is currently participating in a national security meeting. And so she's not able to come to the phone.
She's gone uptown or upscale.
Yeah, she went
on us.
upscale on us.
We better not say too much about her.
Exactly. So she is unable to join us by phone today, but she will be back with us next month.
She might be tapping our phones.
You never know. Absolutely. So let's get the conversation started. E.W. Jackson, recently selected as the Republican candidate for lieutenant governor during the Republican caucus. He's a preacher, noted for his conservative activism and rhetoric about abortion, gay people, Muslims, and President Obama. Rhetoric, yes, that's the word I use, Bill. And Representative Scott Ridgell says he will vote for Jackson, but will not endorse him. And so the question is Jackson a good representative of diversity for the Republican Party? Bill, why don't we start with you?
Oh, he went through the system fairly. He won. Why would he not be a good representative citizen to try to win the lieutenant governorship of Virginia? Why not?
Do you think
rhetoric? Those are his personal beliefs. He's not running to be the bishop of Virginia or the pope of Virginia. those are separate issues. He's running to be lieutenant governor, and I'm sure he can separate those two matters.
Do you think those issues that he's spoken out on, Roger, will become political issues or should be of concern?
Of course there'll be political issues, and of course he's going to be a problem for the ticket. And this is what you get. I think it is as much a system because it was a convention that chose him. I think it's as much a flaw in the process that the Republicans chose for the top three officers. Now, look, they did this because Ken Cuccinelli didn't want to face a primary against Bill Bolling. He knew that his supporters would be able to corral most of the votes and most of the things going on in the convention. And this is what you get. Reverend Jackson didn't even, he ended up last in a four-way race for the Senate previously.
What'd you say, Bill?
You said Bishop
Jackson.
I don't know. I had never heard of him, I'm sorry, before he had run for office from Chesapeake a year previously. So this is what you got. He plays very well to the very social conservatives in the Republican Party, and he was able to corral most of the votes of 8,000 people. Mm-hmm. So now this is going to be an albatross on the ticket as it goes on to November. And if this is what they wanted, this is what they got.
Well, Will, isn't part of the reason, though, that they also picked him is because they're also trying to court the African-American vote. So with his perspective, do you think that that's a good way to court that vote?
I don't know if that was that was part of what their reasoning was in picking him. I think that they probably felt that he best represented the mindset of those who voted. What I found is interesting is I actually like Scott Ridgel, but I thought the ultimate endorsement of someone is voting for them. So to say I'm not endorsing them, but I'll vote for you. I thought that's interesting. But I think as a Christian, what is challenging about it, and Bill alluded to him having his personal views, which I absolutely agree. You should be able to have your personal views. The challenge with Mr. Jackson is that he has certainly made a mix and match of his personal Christian views and how he feels those should be played out politically. And he's actually has videos on YouTube specifically telling, Black Christians that they should in no way be Democrats. I mean, if that's not a problem in terms of, separation of church and state, then I don't know what is.
Even Ken Cuccinelli says, quote, "We are not defending any of our running mate statements now or in the future. The people of Virginia need to get comfortable with each candidate individually." It sounds like they're backpedaling.
That's a dodge of the worst sort. He knows what type of problems. And he is so much, the reverend, the bishop, whatever you want to call him. He is so much in lockstep. He is so much in lockstep with Mr. Cuccinelli on most social issues. So for him to try to distance himself on this, it's somewhat comical. I mean, I don't understand why he would do that at all, but because he knows some of those positions that the bishop has are so out there and are so much going to portray negatively on him when he wants to talk about jobs and drawing business to the state. He knows of how much this is going to be a problem for them as we go to the fall election.
Will take precedence over.
It's going to be most of what gets talked about between now and November, and you can't get around that.
I think Mr. Jackson is actually good for the Republican Party because, politicians, Rogers call it a duck. I mean, that is what they do, and what they're going to have a challenge with is really being: are you really true to what you say you are? Or not. And what we see happening here is that Republicans often go down that certain rhetoric spin line because there's a certain base that they don't want to alienate. They know these people actually go out and vote. But then when it comes time to try to get the general election and get the rest of the populace is going to vote, they try to massage that message to be a little bit more embracive, and they just hope that, it'll work out at the end. But when you have an individual like Mr. Jackson in there whose views are very, very clear and it's documented. It's there on YouTube and so many places. It makes it very difficult to duck.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Bill.
Hey, how are you?
You made it to the studio.
Hey,
That's fantastic.
absolutely. Bishop Jackson and E.W. Jackson. So be respectful. He has a right to run, and some of the issues that he's running on, I don't agree with, and some that he is proclamating, I do agree with.
Mm-hmm. So you think he's a good candidate for the party?
He's a candidate. He's a candidate. I mean, I got to see what else he has to say.
He just ducked. See,
the most important things, especially in the African American community that we're addressing today, is jobs, education, and ability to live in a society and prosper.
But have you seen him address any of those issues?
Not yet. The campaign just started. We just got elected a Democrat as his opponent. So let's see where it goes.
As far as I'm concerned, and what I've been able to read about him and what I've been able to glean from most of his public pronouncements, some of the issues that Bill talks about, he hasn't said anything about those. And that's part of the problem. I mean, if he wants to be a minister, if he wants to be a bishop, fine. Those are the issues that seem to be, most in his forefront, most of what he wants to talk about. Now, how is he going to switch off on that and talk about these other things that really have a primacy for most of the voters in Virginia? Now, let's be real. Lieutenant governor's role is very limited. Your primary place or your primary import is when you break ties in the Senate. But you have a bully pulpit. So he's going to have a bully pulpit. The question is, will Virginians want to hear about that for the next 4 years if he were to be elected?
Hear about what?
Hear about what would be foremost in what he's going to talk about.
He's going to talk about jobs. He's going to talk about education.
He hasn't done it up to now.
Give the man a chance.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he deserves a chance.
Will.
Like I said, I think he is, in my mind, is good for the Republican Party in the sense of, are you really going to show yourself to believe in what you say you believe? Now, I think also, there's a Hampton Roads ecumenical group of bishops that's here in the area. You have people such as, my bishop, Francisco over in Calvary, Courtney McBath, others who are very active and who are very outspoken in terms of things that are needed for the community. And then yet he's not among that group.
I haven't heard them say anything was needed.
And it sort of makes you, I wonder about that.
Because his church is in Chesapeake.
Right, his church, and these are the bishops who are across Hampton Roads and very much are on the forefront of being leaders in the community and so forth.
He's
not among that group.
That's your opinion.
That's what this roundtable is about.
That's your opinion.
Or you all's opinions, actually.
Oh, yeah, that's your opinion. I think.
But you ducked when you see actually if he was a good candidate, you ducked that. That was unlike you, Bill. I'm not used to that.
It is not. What is a good candidate? Are the issues that he has brought up with his spirituality beliefs, are they real issues? Yes, they are. Now, but he's not running for bishop. He's not running to be pope. He's going to have to separate those issues and talk about the real thing.
Exactly.
And I'm going to give him a chance to do that.
And I'm going to tell you that I don't think most Virginians want to hear his sermons.
Because that's all anybody has heard. They haven't heard the issues by which the lieutenant governor would address. So that's why we asked you, is he a good candidate? And
once I hear him address the issues, and I have talked to him,
okay,
and he understands the issues. His daughter's a graduate of Hampton University, so he has good sense. And so we have to figure out what's next. I want to hear what the man has to say.
Well, we know
Again, I am not interested in him being bishop or
He's a
pope.
Harvard Law graduate also. We know the man has sense.
Okay, good.
So in all fairness, also we just held the Democratic primary. Any red flags? Any question about who's in office or who has been selected to go to the general election?
It's going to be very interesting because I think really the election is going to be a referendum on Mr. Cuccinelli, because I think Democrats would be the first to tell you the bench is not deep on some of these positions, and whether Terry McAuliffe wins, I think it's not going to be so much whether you like Terry McAuliffe. It's going to be whether you fear Ken Cuccinelli, especially for Black Americans. Do you think that he is going to take the state in a way that is going to be helpful to you or hurtful to you? Mr. McAuliffe, I think, has been a lukewarm candidate at best. And I think it shows, again, how lackluster some Democrats are for some of these statewide offices. I think Ralph Northam is going to do a very good job against the bishop, as Bill likes to say.
But that's his name. That's his title.
And we'll see. I think it's still a toss-up on the AG's race right now.
Okay. Bill?
I don't know what you're saying. Black people afraid of Cuccinelli. What do you mean by that?
Some of the things that he's done is
Give me
not
an example.
exactly.
Give me a specific example.
First of all, on one of the key issues, voter restoration of voters' rights.
Yes.
He has been a Johnny-come-lately on the
No, he has not.
Yes, he has.
One
he
at a
voted
time.
5 times while he was in the Senate against ways that would have given felons making it easier chance for them to get
Nonviolent felons.
Yeah, nonviolent felons.
Why is that a black folk issue?
Because there
Why
are
does that become a black folk issue?
because there
Thank
are
you.
so many African Americans in the state of Virginia who have lost their rights.
And there's a lot
to
of
vote.
whites who
people,
lost
too.
their rights too. So why is that a black folk issue?
Disproportionately, it is a black issue. Let's be very real about this.
So
Disproportionately.
should white people be afraid of Cuccinelli too?
Yeah, because of that issue.
Have you been in a prison lately in Virginia?
What has that got to do with anything?
No, I'm talking about.
See, now he's ducking.
No, you
One
asked
at a
me.
time.
Oh,
One at a
You
time.
asked me the question.
Yeah.
No,
Why
I
is that?
haven't been
question.
in a prison.
Wait. Let Roger
Yeah,
answer
well,
the
I-
question.
yeah,
I've
have
been in a
either.
prison. Yes,
Yeah,
I've been
in
in a prison.
Virginia.
Let
Often.
Roger
Yeah.
answer
Most
the
of the
question
population
first.
is African American in the prisons in this state. Most of the people who have lost their rights to vote,
Most? Or
Yeah.
percentage-wise?
percentage-wise.
Percentage-wise.
Okay, so
Percentage-wise.
not most, it's percentage-wise.
Okay, now what is your point, Will?
My point is, he asked him about an African American issue, and he calls and pulls out something that
That's not an
affects.
African-American
Yeah,
issue.
that affects everybody.
that's a Virginia
and
issue.
he's stereotyping it as if
I'm not.
incarceration is a
And all
black
black
folk
people
issue.
in jail. All black people
You know,
in jail.
all
I'm
black
not in jail.
people-
My children aren't in
Right,
jail.
I'm not in jail.
Your daughter isn't in jail.
Now, fellas. Now, I mean, are you guys taking it to the extreme a little
No, they're
bit?
trying to.
He
They're
said
trying
most
to.
people.
They're
It's not
trying to
most.
stereotype Cuccinelli as this racist, and that is absolutely not true. He's a believer in certain constitutional rights, and some of these things you guys just don't want to agree
Well,
with.
why don't you enlighten us since you don't believe some of the things that I'm talking about? Why don't you enlighten us on this, Bill?
In terms of my experiences with Cuccinelli,
Yeah,
Or-
about his relationship with
the African American
American
community.
well, I'll tell you one thing he did. He came over to Hampton and sat over and talked to us for 3 hours about helping us with some things we're doing with governance, with the Hampton University Proton Therapy Institute.
And how much money have you gotten on that?
He's not the governor. He's not
Okay.
the governor.
And how much money has he pledged to give you if he were to become governor?
We're asking for $10 million. That's what we're asking for. And if he stands behind it and give us what we deserve, what we qualify for, then we'll be with him. If he doesn't, then we won't. See, we don't vote by R's and D's. We don't look at people by that perspective. We don't think everybody is racist. But racism does exist. But I don't go out and live my day, what the white man going to do to me today, or what Cuccinelli, what scheme is he going to get me in jail. If I don't rob anybody, kill somebody, steal from somebody, I'm not going to go to jail.
I never said he was racist. I said, what is he going to do to help black folks?
He's going to obey the Constitution and give everybody an access to opportunity with fairness. That's all we're asking him or McCullough or anybody else. That's all we're asking any of them. So why are you trying to make him some racist? He is not. He's a man with a large family. He's done things. I've known him for 15 years.
Oh, having a large family means he can't be racist.
No. I'm just saying that means what racist? What are you talking about?
I don't know where, Bill. Maybe it was the fumes in the tunnel today, but I'm not sure.
No. The large family is saying that he believes in things that I believe in. Families, values, morals, those kinds of things that are going to keep our race in existence. Fewer abortions than more. I mean, he just believes in those kind of things.
Can I mention something here?
And he also got that felons' rights thing overdone while working with Governor McDonnell.
He was a Johnny-come-lately on that. He was a Johnny-come-lately on that. The governor did more on that than he did. Let me tell you something.
Okay.
He went to the same high school that I went to in Washington, D.C., as did Governor O'Malley in Maryland.
Cuccinelli?
Yes. He went to the same high school I went to. If you take a look at Governor O'Malley's viewpoints, a liberal Democrat, and Mr. Cuccinelli's, a very conservative Republican, they see the world in very different ways. It will be no surprise to anybody that I'm more aligned with Governor O'Malley. I think that he has a better overall scheme at doing things better for the people of Maryland than the governor does, than the attorney general currently does in Virginia. We'll have to see if he becomes governor whether he'll actually do some of the things that he's pledged to do. However, I have been very dismayed at the Attorney General's response on a variety of things where he seems to be so much more concerned about social issues. He seemed to be so much more concerned with picking fights with the administration. He seemed to be in such denial of climate change and global warming that he picked a fight with a UVA professor. I mean, I don't want him to be involved in all of these social issues if he's to become governor. And that's some of my concerns about him.
Okay, Bill.
Social issues, I think we'll get with this a little bit later in the program. Social issues is what's destroying our country. They just did a story in the Richmond Times-Dispatch where up to 89% of the babies, African-American babies that are being born in the city of Richmond are to single moms.
Okay, hang on, because we're going to talk about that.
But I'm just saying, so that's a social issue. The issue of why our kids are in jail at this high percentage rate. He's dealing with those moral, conscionable issues, and somebody's got to deal with it. Abortions are horrific in our community. I mean, so he's dealing with issues that are important to me and other Virginians. That doesn't make him anything different. It makes him a man of his word. He obviously, again, had good sense enough to go to the same high school that you did. So it all kind of wraps itself together into some things that make sense to me.
Okay, so you two have that perspective. I have a question for you, Will, from one of our listeners who wants to know, what is a bishop? Can you explain
Yeah, I mean, because I actually had the same question. The last time I checked, to be a bishop, you were actually a pastor of other pastors. So you are someone who has a certain number of pastors under you.
It's an administrative
right? So it's an administrative role,
position and
as
role.
opposed to, so oftentimes bishops are someone who has other churches, and he is a pastor to those pastors of those churches, as opposed to someone who just has one church and is calling himself a bishop.
Okay, so in the church that Mr. Jackson pastors, is it a part of a larger denomination, or
I'm
is
not
it
sure. I'm not
Do
sure.
you know,
I don't
Bill?
have that information. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I don't believe so. I think it's a small church that he heads up.
I was trying to look for it.
And I don't know how you defined it.
Okay.
You can call me Reverend Thomas if you want to. So I don't know how that's defined.
Let's pass on that.
You have some repenting to do before you get.
Okay. All right, let's go on to our next topic. St. Paul's College in Lawrenceville has shut its doors after 125 years of educating primarily African Americans. Mm-hmm. It's the latest HBCU to close of the 105 HBCUs nationwide, and HBCU stands for Historically Black College or University. St. Paul is number 13 to close. Congressman Bobby Scott reached out to alumni, faculty, staff, board members, and the Lawrenceville community to offer support, but not much can be done because the decision has already been made. And we know that people in Lawrenceville listen to us on 88.1 WHRV-FM, so we hope that they're listening, that they'll call in about this. But the question is, are HBCUs becoming a thing of the past? Is this a part of our heritage that is going away?
That's a racist statement.
Why is that a racist statement?
There are good HBCUs, there are moderate HBCUs, and there are very bad HBCUs. There are good and great white institutions, there are moderate white institutions, and there are very, very bad white institutions. So to lump all of us in together as these HBCUs and this is happening, we're part of the marketplace. St. Paul's is a private university. They have to raise private money. Mm-hmm. Their alumni have to give back. And some schools, other than others, don't do that. They do it well at Liberty, and they don't do it well at St. Paul's. So we have to learn that that's just part of the cycle. It's no different.
There are, I noticed on the list that the schools that have closed, if I'm not mistaken, they are all, or the majority are private institutions as opposed to state-run
what I just told you. And if you're not entrepreneurial-ish, if you're not going out trying to seek money and funding and being aggressive about it, if you don't have standards that are going to have people come to your institution and be competitive with the majority white institutions. See, education now is not only technologically wise, it's global. Mm-hmm. And if you're not competitive, and if your institution cannot, at the end of the day, especially these days with tuition being what it is, can't produce a job at the end of that cycle, people are not going to go to your school or your institution if you white or if you're black. You have to be competitive.
I talked to one of the accreditation organizations, the Southern Accreditation Organization, and the executive director or the head of that, Belle Whelan, who used to be here in Virginia. She wanted to make it clear. She said this is not as much an issue of HBCUs as it is an issue of small private colleges have a hard time raising money. And I think the figure was either 6 or 8 that her organization had cracked down on in the past several years. And her point was 2 of those were HBCUs, but the others weren't. And the problem, again, is do you have the funding base? Are you having problems paying your bills? Are you able to raise money from your alumni? Look, St. Paul's had problems for the past several years, and it had been able to stave off getting its accreditation snatched from it by appealing or by doing other things to help prolong
last year, they actually lost the accreditation finally.
And they had some appeals process in that. But, hey, it had lost. This had been coming. It ended its athletics programs, I think it was 2 years ago, and that led to a lot of the students leaving the college. And it had already been down to somewhere between 200 or 100 in enrollment over the past year. So, this was coming. The issue is there are a lot more, as opposed to when Bill might have gone to college or when you and I went to college. We have a lot, the kids coming up nowadays, they have a lot more options. Can they get into a majority white university? Are they able to go to community colleges that maybe weren't there 40 years ago? Are they able to do distance learning, which might be a little bit cheaper? Of course, TCC now has a program. You go here, from here, go anywhere. So you can take the first 2 years there. You can get into some very good public schools here in Virginia. So if you are not able to adapt, if you don't have your financial house in order, then you're going to have some problems.
Now, before we continue this discussion, if you're just joining us, we're talking with the Another View Roundtable, Virginian-Pilot columnist Roger Chesley, community activist Bill Thomas, and journalist, author, and talk show host Will LaVeist. The question, though, is, well, here's another question. What about the heritage? Does that matter in this whole scheme? As you're looking at, I hear what you're saying about you have to be competitive, you have to be global, you have to reinvent yourself to go along. Do we care too much about the heritage, Will?
I wouldn't say that we care too much. I would say that the HBCUs have an additional challenge that is tied to the heritage, and that also because the initial reasons for why HBCUs were founded doesn't exist at the level that it used to. And then, as my colleagues were saying, is that you have the whole education landscape that is changing at the same time. So what was once your greatest blessing, that heritage, now can become a hindrance in this global marketplace, because not only has the cost of education changed, the access to education changed, but the reasons for why even people want an education has changed. So, for example, I went to Lincoln University. Very proud my heritage is Lincoln, a graduate in Pennsylvania, HBCU, because I wanted a certain environmental experience. I wanted to be on a campus where I could see a president who was African-American and people, the provost, and they're just running things, and people are not questioning whether you're qualified to do something. But a lot of people now are looking to go to school because I need a job in a year. I need to go and get some specific things. So that need for that kind of experience that was important for me then and at that time in my life may not be the same need for another student. So HBCUs have to deal with all of those kinds of dynamics.
Bill, where did you go to school?
University of Kansas.
Okay, so you're the only one who did not go to an HBCU sitting around this table.
I did not go to an HBCU.
Okay.
But you know now that west and east of the Mississippi, 99% of the HBCUs are east of the Mississippi.
Right.
I'm west of the Mississippi.
Oh, okay. But you work at an HBCU.
Yes.
And so do you see
by choice?
Right. Okay. But do you still see a need for Hampton University, for example, to remain an HBCU, number one, and then secondly, how do all of these schools need to reinvent themselves so that they can stay relevant?
I mean, you can't put yourself in a box. You just can't say I'm doing this for a number of reasons. But there's two things personally that I look at. You should never give up your heritage. Things that we have fought and died for, blood has been spilt, like Hampton and Howard and other institutions, and Lincoln as well.
Bennett.
We should protect, and Bennett, we should do everything in our power to keep that heritage, to keep that history, to keep that lifeblood flowing. We should do it because there is a need for that, to see people of your same color, your same persuasion. In my judgment, my daughter went to Hampton instead of UVA and the rest by choice for that very reason. The thing that I think that schools have to realize is that with affirmative action and all these things, the economic challenges out here, you have to do it better. So the HBCU doesn't matter anymore. It has to be. I am an HBCU. My mom told me a simple thing: you were born black, you're going to die black. I am what I am, but I have to be better. And I can't wait around and wait on the same legacies that kept us afloat during the earlier years that aren't there now. President Obama, I just wanted to comment, President Obama is even restricting funding to HBCUs, where a lot of things, plus loans and Pell loans and all those things have been expanded into the Hispanic community. That's really hurting a lot of HBCUs that aren't attracting other constituents. And then lastly, you have to be innovative. We have the Hampton University campus in Virginia Beach. You have to go out to the marketplace. If you don't go out to the marketplace, you will not survive. As
I would agree with it. I say that the heritage and the relevancy is, my answer is yes. And I say that our approach to the heritage must be, yes, hold on to the heritage, and not yes, but because people are trying to take it from us, is yes, and because it's a valuable heritage to have, and that should be reinvigorated, repackaged, so that people will understand that, yes, when you go to Lincoln, you come from an heritage of writers, from Melvin Tolson and Langston Hughes and Thurgood Marshall. That's part of my heritage. And so if someone is taking classes from Lincoln and they're over in Switzerland or they're in Ghana, which is where a lot of sisters come from Ghana and have that Lincoln heritage because of Nnamdi Azikiwe and Kwame Nkrumah and these great African leaders who went to Lincoln. That's something that should be packaged, but not yes, but, and we got to hold on because if we got to hold on to our little jobs because somebody's trying to take care of something from us. We got to build on that.
Okay, right.
And one thing I like to say, my 5 brothers and sisters and I, we all went to Howard University undergrad, and first generation in our broader family on both mother and father's sides to have gone to college. Okay, so we went there. Of the 10 children, college-age children of my siblings and I, only one went to an HBCU. And part of that is because, okay, our children didn't necessarily grow up in the same neighborhoods and with the same black-white divide that we faced when we were growing up. They had more choices. They had more options. They had more things that they did. They didn't only have black friends growing up like I mostly did and probably most of you did. So they see the world a little bit differently, and they didn't limit themselves as much as perhaps that we did. So, I mean, we wanted to get them to that point where there would be more options, and this is one of the results of that. Sadly, this is one of the results of that. So we're glad that they had the options, but one of the things that has come about is that some of those black universities and black colleges that pretty much had a market, only black kids, lots of black kids only had the option of going there. Now they have more choices.
Let's see what David has to say from Chesapeake. Hi, David. You're in the air.
Hi, Barbara. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
You guys really, I haven't listened to you probably a couple of weeks. Been really busy, but I have a regular caller to the show, and you guys have really opened up the worms today, a can of worms, and a lot of good discussion. I'll try to just stick with the universities. One of the things I think that I've seen over the years is that that may explain some of the lack of students at some of the historic black colleges is that, a lot of them are looking for more diversity. I think one of the things that I used to date a professor from NSU, and she left the university after a couple of years because there's a stigma that kind of has been happening over the years with certain black colleges, which is, did you really earn it? Blah 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 blah. And when they get out into the workplace, not all of those universities really have the weight in all the employment agencies and all the companies and so forth. And so I think a lot of black students are seeing certain things, and they're like, look, I want to go to a college that's more diverse, that carries weight like everyone else, and, to give me that equal advantage in the working place. And I think that's had a lot to do with it.
Okay, David, thanks for your comments. Anybody will?
I think that he makes a valid point. But that's speaking to the changing nature of education and the competitiveness of it. But, it also speaks to something that I just heard recently. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor was talking about, and here she is, a Harvard grad, and sitting there in that confirmation hearing and seeing those same looks of, did you really earn it? Should you really be here? So that is a reality, whether you come out of an HBCU experience or not, because of the racism and a mindset that continues to exist.
Okay,
and that's that's true, but it's not always it shouldn't be, because there's, just like not all majority white colleges are alike, not all majority black colleges are alike. I happen to go to a school that had a radio station that broadcast throughout the city, a public TV station that broadcast throughout the city. It had a weekly student newspaper. It had a campus newspaper. So if you're talking about for communications, you were very well on your way to doing the things you needed to do to get into the workplace. So it's unfair if the employers haven't really done their jobs of looking into what are the credentials and what is the what did you actually learn while you were in school. And that should be the case whether you went to a majority white college or majority black college. And the other thing is, I'll just say this. There is a certain, it goes back to the old statement about the white man's ice is colder, that just because it's white, it's automatically going to be good. Well, that's not the case either. You shouldn't be making that type of stereotype as well. So you really need to look into what are the qualifications and what are the qualities that you get from the particular institutions of higher learning,
regardless of whether it's HBCU or not. Bill, you get the last word on this topic.
It gets down to leadership. You find the elite HBCUs are the elite majority white schools. It's the leadership. Let me just take an example of Hampton University. We've launched a $140 million satellite. We built a $225 million, $250 million proton therapy cancer institute. I mean, you've done things to niche that institution so it becomes competitively globally. And then because you're an HBCU, then that becomes a added value. And so you got to think in those terms, but you got to have leadership. And if you look at any majority school or any HBCU that's failing or struggling, look at the top and look at the management and look at the presidents, and you'll see that's where it starts. And so you got to have it and just got to get out there and fight it, no matter if you're UVA, Harvard, or the Black Harvard, Hampton University. You just got to go out there and do what you got to do.
Got that in there, didn't you?
Absolutely.
Black Harvard.
Okay, let's go on to our next topic. Father's Day is Sunday, and here's a startling statistic, at least by the Richmond Times-Dispatch. In the city of Richmond, 60% of all families are headed by a single parent. In the African-American community in Richmond, that number is 86%. So where are the dads? What is going on? I know, Bill, you're very passionate about this. So I'm going to start with you on this one.
I moved into a neighborhood in Norfolk maybe 20 years ago after a bunch of riots around the city and across the country saying that you can make a difference. The first thing that I saw or did not see was fathers and fathers working. It was the most disgusting thing. It made me feel uncomfortable that dads were having all these babies and they were just lazy jerks that weren't taking care of their women and their babies. And it was the saddest thing that I could ever imagine. And it's just gotten worse. The Department of Health in Virginia just came out with some statistics, and I'll share them with you, Roger. I didn't bring them today. but I think Petersburg is like 92%. You look at these cities around the Commonwealth we have fathers being 100% worthless, and then we have all of these congenial bishops out here with these entertainment center churches, and all of this stuff is going on, and nobody really gives a darn. I think it is the worst thing for black men not to protect black women and their children. It's just a decay of everything, and it's going to kill us. It is going to destroy us. Roger sent a story in. I think the guy
I'll talk about that.
Go on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there was a story that came about. It might have been from theroot.com, but it linked to a report from Nashville, Tennessee. You got a guy who's about 33 years old. He has 22 children by 14 women. Now, this is crazy. And the reason why you say, well, why is the station singling him out? Well, because it's costing taxpayers. He's behind on his child support. And so the city and the state has to step in and try to help the children that this man has fathered. Now, there are so many things to shake your head about this one that it just drives you nuts. Why are the women, they know what type of man this is, so why are they going to bed with him? You know, he seems to be proud. One of the statements that he made is, well, my name is going to be out there for generations now. Well, I'm not exactly sure if that's going to be the case if you never married these women, and if they're going to have the same last name that you have. They probably have their own same last name for the children. But it just seems like it's a dereliction. You can use birth control. You can tamp down on your appetites. It was pathetic. It was pathetic.
What do you think, and I'm going to come to you on this one, Will, to start with. What do you think it is, though, where does the disconnect happen? You know, all three of you sitting here are fathers. You're all in the home. You're all taking care of your families. Where is the disconnect with that brother out there who doesn't? Where does that come from?
Well, I think all of what my colleague said is true. These are individual cases, and they get multiplied and multiplied. But I think that you're talking about something that is a societal problem that is a lot bigger than pointing out somebody being irresponsible and having 35 kids or whatever the number is. Mm-hmm. And when you ask that specific question, a lot of it has to do with the legacy and what you came up and what you saw, and the legacy that you got from your father or you got from your parents about being responsible and being accountable, and how you were raised in your home and in your community. But I think that we have to also be able to call and put to the point that there are things that have happened in our society that have specifically had a negative impact in the black community that has helped to produce this situation that we see. For example, this whole so-called war on drugs and the impact that had in those dramatically disproportionate drug cases, and how they took males out of the home for a lot of nonviolent drug cases. So now look at how this plays out. You got someone, look at how this plays out, and see, unlike Bill, I grew up in the inner city and I watched this happen growing up in Brooklyn and Brownsville. So you take males out of the home in drastically high numbers, right? Mm-hmm. And you incarcerate them. So now who are they being raised by now? So now we get to see, just like what was recently in USA Today, they're talking about Camden, New Jersey. They're talking about the kinds of dysfunction that's going on out there. And we got a young brother, 20 years old, saying that when I was younger, I wanted to go into prison because I saw my uncles, these other dysfunctional cats in my life, going into prison and coming home, and all the girls wanted them. So that's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be America's most wanted. So when you add all of these dynamics going on, then you don't have the buffer. You don't have the person that can stand in the gap and could change the mind of a young person like that and retransform their mind. Bill just finished saying that churches are not doing anything. Well, There's a lot of churches that are doing. My church particularly has a C3 men's training program where they got men working with young men. There are a lot of churches that are doing things, but it is a huge problem that requires individual responsibility as well as businesses, as well as government responsibility, because the government has been the one on a key attack.
All right, Bill, you've been sitting there about to die.
No, I
Go
am.
ahead.
I mean, the issue is really simple. When we grew up, if you had a baby and you weren't married, it was shame, just pure out shame. And somebody asked me the other day, Bill, when did your parents talk to you about sex? Or when did they talk to you about this, that, and the other? They really didn't. What they talked about were the consequences. They would talk about the consequences. If you were out there in the streets after 11 o'clock, they used to have this thing come on TV at 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. Where are your children?
Do you know where your children
and do you know where your children are?
Yeah.
And it's just basic morality. It's not complex. Nobody is taking somebody out and say, go take a snort of cocaine. You think it's
Bill,
the morals.
It is complex.
Our communities,
Bill,
it's my time to talk. It's my time to talk.
Wait a minute, one at a
It's
time.
my time to talk.
One at a time.
It's my time to talk.
Okay.
Okay,
Our
'cause we got about
communities
4 minutes left, so
have
come
become immoral. And they are now, we celebrate immorality. And we don't do anything to challenge it. And I'm not saying if I got somebody, I would never get anybody pregnant when I was growing up and turn sex down. Because I knew that something happened, I would be in front of that church and you'd have your mama crying, your grandmama crying. You'd be up there and they'd be wailing on you for an hour, and the consequences were just too tough. So you didn't do it. And it wasn't because I love God, but I did. But it's because I didn't want to disappoint my parents, my dad, my sisters and brothers, that we just looked at it, and we looked at it as shame.
Okay, go ahead, Roger.
One thing that is most troublesome to me, and I think Will did bring up some good points about, yes, there are problems, and yes, what have the whole war on drugs. That's a point. But there also seems to be, before some of these individuals even went into prison, I can go out here and have sex with a woman, and I'm not going to be involved if that act creates a child. I'm not going to be involved in that child's life. I'm not going to pay for child support. I'm not going to help raise that child. And it is such a dereliction of duty. It is such a as if you don't care about your actions. And if you don't care about your actions, this is going to happen. And if women are going to keep on having sex with some of these men who they know are no good in the first place.
They have it in prison. They're having sex in prison.
I don't understand it.
See, Barbara, what I'm saying, these gentlemen, or what they're saying is true. Mm-hmm. But where they have
hold on. Go
they
ahead.
seem to have a problem that to point out that it's not as simple as Bill would like it to be.
That simple.
Means
Hold on, Bill.
that you're
It is
not
that
making
simple.
people responsible. And so what I'm saying to them is, if, like, I grew up with my father around, and then my parents got divorced like they did, and I'm 12 years old, and he's not there anymore, and this multiplies among other people in the community. Now, where there's a young 14-year-old cat coming up in the barbershop, my father's not in that barbershop now. The other guy in the community that was raising his kid is not in that barbershop anymore. So when you keep asking, why is it that they don't have this moral fiber? Why is it that they don't understand right from wrong? Is because that buffer, that information there is now broken. And so it's not just a simple and just, it's just all right. Just be responsible.
Where is the guy who walked away from his responsibilities?
As I just said, things happen in life.
Hold on.
Things happen in life.
Wait,
and
hold
my
on, Bill.
father stayed involved. Mm-hmm. Not all fathers will do that. And if you multiply that over multiple neighborhoods, multiple numbers of people, you can't keep holding a 14-year-old totally responsible for what he doesn't know. And that's what I keep trying to point out to these guys.
The government should get out of the way. And then if you have these responsibilities, and if you can't take care of it, let nature take its course.
So let the government reverse what it did with the war on drugs, because it certainly got in the way.
The war on drugs
certainly got in the way.
I have opportunities when I was married all the time to have all the sex you want.
One at a time.
You have to be responsible. You have to be. You have to respect it.
All
right, but let's
guilty is charged.
Okay, but listen to this. Well, the question is this: then knowing that this disconnect, Will, that you talk about is there, knowing, Bill, that you talk about the fiber of the family and what was necessary, how do we bring it back to our community? What do we need to do to bring it back?
Programs such as at my church.
Okay.
C3 Men's Training Program. Men at the church, working with young men at the church, whether they are their children or not. Multiplying this over various churches, various organizations. I was just out at Mount Trashmore with Robert Hill Sr., did the Thousand Kings Walk. This is a 25-year-old young guy, cat. They got a group of young people together that represented from Norfolk State, from Hampton, from ODU, stand out there and marching and saying, look, we're going to start being responsible. Support those young people. He's been on my show. Support them.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and, we just had a young man who got killed by a Norfolk police officer not too long ago allegedly over some type of bogus check type issue. Now, there's a lot of concern about that. But I think there needs to be just as much concern about those issues in terms of the lack of fathers being around and what are these young people that they've left behind, what are they doing? There needs to be as much vocal about that as when, some type of shooting by a police officer takes place.
I think you got to take the safety net and get rid of it. If you
the
have
safety net of
this welfare, you have babies, you get paid for it, you get all of these things. I just think we got to turn it loose and let nature take its course. And at the same time,
what does that mean? Let nature take its course? Because if you don't support people in terms of welfare and so forth, I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
They have a grandparent, they have a church, they have a kin, they have cousins, they have brothers
let
and
everybody
sisters.
Else, let the rest of the society
community take care of it instead of the government. Get the government out of this stuff. And at the same time, that's promote self-love to our women, to our girls, and let them know that their bodies are their castle, and they got to stop hanging out and dealing with these knucklehead crackheads because nothing is going to become of it. And, the crackhead who's taking crack and then going to jail, that's their fault. That's not anybody else's fault.
You're right to get the government out of it. Your government's war on drugs was a direct assault on the black community. And your government should reverse that. Direct assault. Your government did that. It is documented.
I have no unchosen
President
obligation.
Clinton said it. He agrees with it.
I don't care about what Clinton said. Clinton, he was doing things. I don't care about Clinton. He was one of the reasons why we have the problems we have.
Right,
he was having sex with his intern right underneath the president's desk.
Now, here we go.
No, that's true. We got to stop this immorality.
Let's stay on topic.
I am on topic. That's true. But see, y'all don't want to hear it. I'm sorry.
I don't mind the government being involved as a last resort. Some of the welfare and food stamp benefits, nobody's going to get rich off of that.
$31 a week.
These are keeping people basically alive. This is subsistence. What there has to be is everybody to have a little bit more responsibility of their actions.
Okay. And for that, gentlemen, we are out of time. I so appreciate you. We didn't even get to things to view and do in Hampton Roads this time because I wanted you guys to continue the conversation. Thanks so much. And you can listen to the podcast of today's Another View or any other AV program. Just go to WHRV.org, click on 89.5, and then on podcast. And today's show will be posted after 3 o'clock. Next week, a discussion on diversity and inclusion with diversity expert Michelle Woods. For producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Perry Smith, Ashley Dillard, who answered our phones, I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Happy Father's Day out there to all the dads who are involved. You are very, very special. And let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.